news. Shatterpoint receives its first ever big wave of balance changes. What got better? What got worse? It's time to find out.
Hello everyone and welcome back to part 2 of our May changes recap video here. So once again, I've got my buddy Lee joining us. Always here to talk about new units and new to us units in terms of these May changes. So we got a lot to cover. We've already done a Republic video in our last one, so you can check that out. Today we're going to be ambitious and try to do the rest of everything. So there's a lot, but I think we can go through these some of them pretty quick. So, Lee, I'm going to go through them rapid fire for a few of them, and then we'll get to the back and forth where we can talk about more. So, let's just dive right into it. First of all, Aurra, much maligned, really bad character before. She got a huge glow up in expertise because now she's getting 2 results on 1 expertise where before she got 0. That's really great for 5 dice attacks especially. And she kind of has permanent payday for free, but she can only choose a primary. Good improvements. I don't think there's anything game-breaking we can do with that tag synergy, just because a lot of the good stuff is now gated behind 2 tags, like Republic Jedi, Rebel Spectre, Clone Bad Batch, that kind of stuff. Exactly. And I don't know if she brings enough swing for a 5. Anything you want to add on?
No. I'm eager to put her on a table, but...
Dark Troopers, it feels kind of crazy to just skim by these guys, but hey, their problem before was they were just too tanky. Now they don't have crit mitigation in their expertise, and they have 1 less health.
Yeah.
They still bring a lot to the table, but they're a little less tanky. So I think they'll still be a pretty solid support for Empire. They're just not Stormtroopers is the only thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely still see them on a table. They still have that amazing coordinated fire. They still can't be moved via pushes or force.
Yeah, they're still immovable. They have still protection, immunity to pin. Their defense is essentially as good as Clone Commandos. Yeah. And their attack tree is better, and they just have a different kit. Elite Squad. Maybe we should have talked about this a bit more, but we already talked kind of about the removal of coordinated fire expose in the Republic video. I'm happy it's gone. They buffed the attack for the Elite Squad to compensate, so now they can throw 8 dice with decent expertise pretty effectively. These are ones that I kind of can't say too much right now because it feels like we're going to really have to see them on the table to see how good the option of supporting fire hunker or heal, like it seems like it could be really good situationally, and I'm not sure until I put it on the table.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I do really like the direction they've gone with ESTs, especially with the removal of coordinated fire expose. They feel like they're a toolbox unit, which I think is very interesting to see out of them. But yeah, they're a Rebel era 4-point without the Stormtrooper tag as an Imperial support, which is like
they're Empire era, like the in between era.
I'm sorry, you're
officially
right.
Called. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And as we'll see in our more long-form segment, there's some very good stuff competing with them in that era. Gwarm and the whole Hondo box got an era change. So actually, we'll start with Hondo and Cad. Their only changes were eras. People were asking for this, so this is really nice. For me, it kind of comes down to 2 names that I think of. With Cad, I think Lobot, because Lobot's big problem has, for me at least, been having to take a 3-cost scoundrel usually, if you're like building him with scoundrel heavy lists. Now you can put a 9 with him who's a scoundrel and bring some sort of other 4-cost support, so that could be good. And then for Hondo, in the original eras, it's like, okay, I take ARFs or I take Magnas, but then I'm kind of like a worse Gar or worse Separatist. Now the name that comes up for me is Bosk. Hey, if these scoundrel heavy lists, I can bring Bosk and, again, a 4-cost support.
I definitely appreciate the the availability of having a 9 that crosses as many eras as Cad does. Huge. I think he's got a very sort of like ubiquitous kit. Like everyone appreciates having Force Regen, and 2 Force Regen of your bounty hunters is always great. Hondo is...
He has a very generalist kit too. Like the fact that because scoundrelly lists tend to lack movement, right?
That's true.
So the fact that Hondo can bring those dashes, it helps. Similar to why I like putting Lobot in there. So Scoundrel has generally got a bit more flexible in being able to cram in a little bit more movement. Gwarm also got the era change. He got some other small improvements here and there. He can climb while engaged. His tactic is no longer range restricted. And I think he got 1 extra die in melee. So a bunch of small things. My only thought with him is I wish he got the pawns treatment. so that he could dash himself on the tactic. That at least opens up ways for him to, focus and then shoot. But hey, if we're running like a Lobot thing now, maybe that's something where now he can at least advance, focus, shoot if he's near Lobot. We'll see.
I think we had this conversation a long time ago, but the idea that, like, how do you make 3-point Gwarm great? Bring a 5-point Lobot, and then Gwarm's amazing.
Yeah, even then, they have to be close, but yeah.
Maybe there's a world where, like, you really want to run that pirate synergy, or Weequay synergy.
Pirates themselves, I think, are pretty good. We'll come back to them in the longer form, I think, because they're worth talking about a bit more. Logray got a change to be rangeless on his extra defense die. I don't think he really needed a buff, but this, I think, is mainly for confusion, because before it was like measuring to the unit, not to the character, and that created some weird scenarios. So small buff for him. Leia Logray still definitely, I think, the best way to run. Ewoks, Vader 1, dual box Vader. Now he only can do damage for dice with Empire and Republic. So this is kind of what people were guessing might happen.
Yeah.
It's both not a big change, but also a big change because certain characters that he comboed well with before, like Obi-2 was one of the main ones. He can't give dice to them anymore. He can't give dice to some people liked Vader Han, and in that one you also had like R2 and Lando, and they don't get the dice. So it is a nerf to a character who hasn't seen as much play recently. But if you still want to run him with like Kiadi, you can.
Yeah. And to me, it feels quite thematic and on point. So, like, I'm actually fine with this.
They didn't completely neuter a character who has had a fall from grace already, right? Yeah. This isn't the days where people were screaming, Vader's terrible for the game, back at the start. MagnaGuards, maybe this can be our jumping point into a bigger conversation about Separatists, because there's a couple other Separatist things. They needed a nerf. Their expertise got toned down. They went down to 9 health. They feel much more appropriate for a 3 now. It's that kind of problem of they were holding up their whole faction, in a sense, right? And I want Separatists to be good and viable, but I want it to be that because they have lots of good units, not some okay, decent units and one silly good unit in MagnaGuards. And I don't think the rest got brought up to compensate. So Jango, not so fast, got changed. Asajj got some buffs as well.
She did.
But I don't know if it's enough. Do we want to talk, whatever order you want to bring it up, and what do you want to talk about for the Separatist changes?
I wouldn't mind talking about Jango, and admittedly, I've got a somewhat selfish perspective. Anyone who knows me, but you might have heard of it on this channel, I run a fair number of Shatterpoint events, and in my opinion, Jango, as much fun as he is, as much as I enjoyed playing him, I think Jango created some fairly negative play experiences, especially for people who didn't expect it, i.e. newer players. And it really hurts to be told as a newer player, like, you don't get a turn. And so, just from, not even from a gameplay perspective, but as an organizer, and as someone who like tries to teach a Shatterpoint and tries to make it like a thing that I'm trying to build a community around, I didn't like Jango not so fast. And I think this new version, is like still pretty good. It's very good.
But it's one of my hot takes. Yeah,
exactly. But it's not toxic, which is what I like.
Jango could have lost this ability. He could not so fast could be a blank ability, and he'd still be a good secondary. Yeah. He had a poor showing at Worlds, but I think that's more because of like he doesn't have a home, not because of he's still a very good unit.
It's also probably worth mentioning they did change the amount of force he pulls on.
Yes, he regens a little bit less force, but still like force regen on secondary.
Yeah. All in all, like I think Jango is much healthier for the game, and I really like that you can dash in any direction. That's huge. Like I was a little surprised that it wasn't like dash towards whoever came out with a reserve slot.
I'm surprised he gets a dash at all. Like if the idea is like he's this gunslinger, maybe he should just be like quick draw.
Yeah, totally.
But good for him. Good for him. What do you think of Asajj? She got they changed her. What was it called before? It's the thing Barris has.
Slipaway?
Yes, they changed her slipaway, and now instead she gets to advance instead of, or reposition instead of advance, And they kind of redid some of her combat cards a little bit to give her a bit more punching power. She's a little more annoying to attack because she can give you an expose and Makashi. Add in an extra box in Makashi and move some damage around. How do you feel? How do you feel about new Asajj?
I'm going to mention that someone else actually was the one who came up with this, my friend Sean Scott. And it was that Asajj really, really felt like Ahsoka in how she plays, in sort of like being the pay a force for a jump and being very melee oriented. And unfortunately, yeah, I very much agree. And like my feelings on Ahsoka aren't super positive. And so I feel like Asajj kind of falls into that same trap of being fairly, like, I find it very difficult to sort of get her in position to affect the board without spending a ton of force. I get the play style. I get the idea that she's supposed to be like, oh, she zips in, she gets a kill, she maybe refreshes some of the force that she spent to get all the way in there. She's got diceless displacement, which is always great. I do like the change to slip away to swift retreat. I found that slip away was one of those things that I didn't use a whole lot.
It was so great when you
It was
got
amazing.
I'm actually kind of sad. It gave her something to do when it's not her turn. She's a very greedy primary. And that's still the case. You mentioned her force usage. It goes crazy once she's wounded, and she's still not that much more durable.
Yeah.
She can have very dynamic turns, and that will be even more. That's going to happen more now with these tweaks. She can have some really explosive turns. But I think I just generally want a primary to do a bit more, and I feel like she might still be the third best Separatist primary, and there's only 3 of them. So how much table time is she really going to see? And like in a Dathomirian list, am I really going to take her instead of Maul, who can do similar-ish things? Obviously,
And not
very
get force burden. I do really like that they changed her, like on her killy Jarkai stance. That the expertise tree changes. Sorry, expertise table changes are very welcome. I think as anyone who played old Asajj, like, oh boy, I got 2 expertise, and it's like
doesn't matter.
Really doesn't matter. And now you're actually getting some real value out of someone who's meant to be like this really skilled assassin. So like, I'll play her. You know, like I'll try her.
Exactly.
Out.
I'll give her a try. I feel like Separatists needed a bit more. My heart goes out to them right now because their box got delayed and they got kind of 2 nerfs and 1 buff in a faction that was already struggling. Nothing for B1s, nothing for B2s, nothing for super tax. If we want to keep the negativity rolling a little bit, there's something positive for Ewoks. C-3PO and R2-D2, big buff.
Whoa,
So
what a change.
I don't know if you've been doing some measuring on the table, but basically this range 5 steadfast bubble, you can be affecting multiple midline points turn 1, like from deployment essentially, and that's a big deal. Being able to give someone on the midline steadfast right from the start of the game, because Bo, Wrecker, you still have to move them into position.
Yeah.
These guys don't have to move. Now, am I going to take them in any list that's not a Leia Freedom Fighter list? No, probably not. But in that context, they're actually kind of spicy now. Absolutely.
I think the move to 3 points was really good for list building, especially in the because you were going to bring a 7-point Leia. I think there's probably something worth talking about in regards to like which missions you pick with when you've got 3PO and R2, because you can sure, you can't always get the mission you want, but to your point, being able to affect the midline, being able to lock up like easily a quarter of the board right off the hop. I think sabotage looks really interesting. Shifting priorities looks really interesting.
I think shifting is probably still what you want with these Ewok lists, like covering 2 of the 3 middle points with steadfast, but they're not super mobile, so you might shy away from something like odds or first contact. But still, when there's one midline objective, having people steadfast on that objective, it helps a lot. So, I like that Brilliant Oration is free as well.
Yes.
Like they're a support only unit. Yes, they have an attack, but it's pretty bad. Maybe you get some shoves, and that's great. But they really amped up the support abilities, which is good.
I think it's really weird, but I'm actually very eager to try an Ewok list because of 3PO and R2. And And Pathfinders. I actually think Pathfinders might be the secretly great Ewoks.
that, of course, is a great transition to say, I think the big problem with Ewoks is that the best Ewok lists are still Leia Logray.
Yeah.
Chirpa got a buff and a nerf because, like Logray, his attack die, his extra attack die is rangeless, but now his identity only triggers off of attacks. Nothing for the supports. So I feel like, kind of much like Separatists, the Ewoks are struggling and they didn't get enough. Other than the lists that were already good, the Leia Logray just got a little bit better because, yeah. C-3PO for 3 cost, I think I'm always taking that instead of Luke.
Yeah. I think there is something really interesting here about, like, I want to say, if you really love playing Ewoks, then, you got something. But, like, did you actually? Because if you did like playing Ewoks, like, are you someone who wanted to put Ewok models on the table? In which case, you didn't really get that much. But if you were someone who was like, I love playing Ewoks, I run nothing but Rebels under Endor Leia, and it's like, okay, yeah, they got better, but, like, Rebels were always good, so... Yeah, it's an interesting place for them, surely.
Do you want to save us, Lee, with some optimism? Well, I mean, you can bring us wherever you want, but maybe we need something happy to talk about here.
I'm going to be very selfish. I'm going to talk about Inquisitors. Boy, oh boy.
Yep.
Like, let's start with GI. I really like... My favorite thing about him, my favorite change about him was removing the range requirement on Secrets Uncovered.
Ooh,
I know
you cheeky boy. You cheeky boy.
It's so cheeky. It's so silly, but, like, I think you can play a game with GI and never once use Secrets Uncovered, and that is still a super valid thing. Because, like, even if you never use it, being able to hang that sort of Damocles over your opponent of, like, go ahead, leave one of your objectives. Like, I think that's super strong. Like, this might mean that your opponent has to leave a body behind on an objective rather than committing it to a more aggressive line of play, just because you have the ability to go, no.
It might not be worth it for the 2 Force, but you never know. And at the end of the day, Grand Inquisitor is bringing so much Force refresh, too. Like,
yes.
Empire's generally pretty good at killing, maybe less so now, but... This is a really good, reliable Force refresh, and I think opens up some very interesting Force spammy lists, especially since you've got something like Vader 3, who also refreshes Force and can use it. So, who's also Inquisitorious.
I really like that Grand Inquisitor plays better with the Empire as opposed to just with the Inquisitorious. I don't think you'd necessarily want to just run, like, GI with no other Inquisitors, but
You'd want someone for him to dash, yeah.
you do want something there. But I really like that now he plays well with the Empire. If an Imperial gets a wound, then he can trip his identity. Like, that's really nice. And also he got some buffs to his dice, as I recall.
He's got good... his ranged attacks got a bit better, notably. I think that's one of the big things. Speaking of ranged attacks, Third Sister has a purpose now. Or not Third, Fourth Sister. Well, we'll get to Third, but I think they pair well. Fourth Sister, now she's like the Inquisitor support with a ranged attack.
Yeah.
And that's handy. And she has, like, still 1 cost diceless displacement on a support. She's not as tanky or as sticky as Fifth Brother, but she brings a bit of a different flavor. And I could see a reason to take her now, whereas before there was no reason to take her instead of Fifth Brother.
I really like that they gave her Swift Retreat, kind of like Asajj. I think I can't remember what the name of the old version was, but this
was so bad. Yeah.
Like, oh boy, when I'm wounded, I get to repo. Golly gee, like, I guess I get to shake a pin if you wounded me with... Like, that was the main way I used it. Just like, I got pinned and I got wounded. Haha.
Yep.
But now this is just very functional. She strikes me as being hypermobile. She's got a very competent range profile. And, good segue to Third Sister, there are ways of her little attacks, which could be ranged attacks.
Exactly. When Third Sister uses, again, free Call of the Hunt, I like what they're doing with some free active abilities.
Yeah.
Because you kind of, compared to, like, Tactics, a free active, you have more flexibility with when you use it, but it will go up in cost if and when you get wounded/injured. And it's a cool design space to explore. So yeah, I love the idea that I think if you're taking Third Sister, I can see a world where, okay, that's when I take Fourth Sister because it gives me more range on the Call of the Hunt to dash, throw a lightsaber, and then, maybe get a shove. Or a shove and a dash from Expertise. Versus if you only have one of them, okay, maybe then if I don't have the support or the secondary in Third Sister, if I don't have Third Sister, I'll take Fifth Brother instead, because he just kind of is a solo operator more so.
He's still good. I also like that Call to Hunt is now dash and make a 5 dice as opposed to or make a 5, which was like don't get me wrong. Dashing a tiebreaker is always handy, but it's still a force. It's pretty expensive to do, especially once she starts getting hurt. And I feel like the new iteration just makes her so much more applicable to running inside the Inquisitorius. It's great. I'm so happy.
Yep, she's pretty tanky as well. She's got nice defensive expertise and deflect. So there's a spot for her in Inquisitor focused lists, but and rerolls. She's only melee, but she has rerolls too. Sorry.
Exactly. They changed again one of those abilities which I imagine must have had a purpose at some point, but like it never felt great to like, I'll remove your conditions so I can roll extra dice. These conditions, which are all good and valid and important, and I want you to keep them. Now it's just like, oh yeah, I think your betrays you makes a lot of sense, and I really like it. So
it does compete with Enfeeble because they're both triggering off of the attack, so you got to choose one or the other. If you Enfeeble Pin, you're not going to then be able to say, oh, I want to reroll these dice because you've already used that trigger. So something to be aware of. But yeah. Inquisitor's looking much spicier.
Actually, that's a very good segue to something that's not actually part of this list, kind of, which is that, hey, we just saw a whole bunch of units lose Coordinate Fire Expose. Enfeeble Exposed still exists, and is one of the very few ways that you can get an Expose prior to an attack. Which I was reading this article written by someone a long time ago, very very handsome and smart, talking about how Expose was probably the best timed condition in the game, and I very much agree with that.
Yes, Expose is one of the only conditions you can get exactly when it's required.
Exactly.
And actually, that is a fantastic transition, because one thing that I've always been interested to see if we would ever get a disarm exactly when you need it. And now we have that, because Mind Trick on Obi-Wan Kenobi has been changed to essentially, if I could have dreamed, for a while I've dreamed of what I wish Mind Trick could be, because old Mind Trick was much like Not So Fast. It could just be a real feels bad and just completely game skewing. But now it's exactly what I want, where Obi-Wan can disarm the attacker right before they roll dice.
Yeah. I love this for two big reasons. The first being, again, I'm an organizer. The number of times that I've run an event and I've had to come to a table and explain how Mind Trick works, I just don't think it's a very positive experience. It was a feels bad moment in a lot of events. So I'm glad that it's gone.
It costs only one force, so it's a bit more spammable. Maybe it's going to be a bit more... It's differently powerful. It could still be very powerful, but again, we're looking at a unit that has not really any tag synergy.
Yeah.
And could struggle to find a home. Maybe we still see him in Kiadi lists. Who knows? Maybe Mace lists because you've got so much force.
It's funny because very happy for the change, but my worry is where does he go now? So. Alrighty.
So that was a me pick. Where do you want to go to next, Lee?
Well, let's hear about those pirates. I really like the changes, actually. I think I like that they had easy access to climbs before, but for a unit that's a pack hunter, you kind of want to get them into melee. That kind of felt like it was at odds with each other, and I really like that exit strategy now exists for them. I think that's a good change in their direction. I know you've been generally more positive on using pirates in the past, but now they're even better, so...
Yeah, I think pirates are one of those things, as soon as they were revealed, I think a lot of people were like, this is one of the worst units in the game, and I thought that was maybe a little unfair because they did have good expertise, access to some decent numbers of dice, a fine tree, and steadfast. Easy access to steadfast, and that's really good. The problem is they don't really have a home. The era change helps a little bit with that. Being able to climb when you're engaged helps them basically always get their active ability with raiding party, so that's really good. I think they're a very good splash scoundrel 4. Before, I think bounty hunters were fine, but if you're looking at a Lobot list, something with Lobot, maybe a Cad list or a Lando list, giving them the 5 dice attack is probably better than giving bounty hunters a 5 dice attack, because they both shove on 1. 9 health, Their defense is still pretty bad, but 9 health and access to steadfast, it could help them not get one-shot quite so much. So I think they have more places now.
Even just a little buff of getting 6 attack dice now on both range and melee, super valid. I understand why people maybe weren't super keen to put them on the table, but now, yeah, I think they absolutely have a place. And I know I'm going to keep saying this, but like, I'll play them. I'm actually working on painting them right now, so
There you go.
yeah, looking forward to it.
So let's go to Mr. Luke Skywalker from the Rebellion. Kind of a minor tweak, but could have some big impacts.
Yeah.
So I say this because, you know what Rebels are really good at? Dashing in their defensive expertise. Ezra dashes on 2 expertise. Leia dashes on 2 expertise. If you've got her in the, I think Covert Rebel is the name of that stance. And then Kanan dashes on 1 expertise in Pack Hunter stance. So before, it's like, okay, well, I shove you and then I pin you. So even if you rolled the expertise or you're going to re-roll with Callus, you're not going to dash back onto the objective. Well, now there are going to be times where you just can't be pinned. It's still a little unreliable, though.
Luke is certainly in an interesting place in being a rebel primary that doesn't move a friend. That's rough. Especially, like, he has no revenge trigger and he doesn't move a friend. That's rough for any rebel primary. I do really like the change to the identity, if only because I think it sort of it makes him less selfish.
I do really like that he helps his friends a little bit now, because, like, sure, I get it. The idea is he's supposed to be this lone operator Jedi Knight, but he still is out there helping his friends. Yeah,
pair him up with people who can help move him. And, yeah. Again, if you're someone who really, like, you really liked Skywalker as a character and you were really excited to put Jedi Luke on the table, good news. Like,
good news.
He only got better.
Okay. Well, you get to choose technically, but the choice is made for you. It's only bad news now.
A bit of a downturn to finish off with, but I actually think a healthy downturn. I think
exactly. This is good news for the game. So just to be clear, I guess what we're talking about, no changes for Iden. Hask's innate ability to add an extra hit is now greatly changed, so it only measures range from him, it only works on supports, and is change a fail to a hit. So greatly reduced, and then ISF, their peak damage was reduced a little bit. But they can still double tap people pretty effectively. Though it will be harder without the extra Hask hit as reliably.
Honestly, I think this is, again, very good for the game. I still think there's a world where you still take Hask. Like, he's still valid.
He's still a pain to kill. Like, you don't want to kill him because his revenge is so nice. Because of how easily he shoves. And if you don't kill him, he's hard to stack conditions on because he heals in defensive expertise. He's good in range. He's good at melee. He's flexible. He went from, like, S tier to maybe just B tier, which is fine. I think he was always the problem. So the fact that Iden didn't get any changes, I'm fine with. Especially after turn 1, her tactic is doing a lot less. So then she's really just a pretty selfish primary with fine identity. So again, she went from S tier to maybe like B tier. And even if they're not at the top of the meta anymore, Inferno coming down a little bit helped all the squads that were like, well, I just can't play because I'm just dead all the time. And when I'm dead all the time, I can't do anything. My movement doesn't work. My abilities are too expensive. Yes, this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah. I feel like the change to ISF is especially relevant, especially with the changes to Hask. I don't know. I definitely felt like, yeah, sure, they're special forces. You expect them to be very good at wounding characters, but they were exceptional for 4 points, especially when they were just getting an extra free hit. Like, you were generally always pushing like 3 results quite easily.
The amount of times that they could just one shot. Like, one guy is like, okay, well, I have 2 shots. I should kill this 8 health thing with 2 shots. Oh, I did it on the first shot. Great, I can go shoot someone else. Happened way too much for a support. ISF, I think they might see less table time just because they have to be so good at killing almost to justify their spot. But infiltration is still good. They're still relatively tanky. Again, maybe now they're just B tier. But Empire, unlike some other factions that got nerfs, they actually got buffs in other places. So they still have some fun toys to play with. They still have a lot of great units. do we want to wrap up, I guess, with, we mentioned I did not get any changes. Kanan didn't get any changes either. Sure. I can see the argument each way. Kanan does do a little bit too much. I think it's a similar situation, the way I see it, to someone like the MagnaGuards, where it's like, yes, MagnaGuards were crazy. They needed a little bit of a tone, to be toned down a little bit, but the other stuff in the faction needed to be brought up. Yeah. Kanan, I think, needed to be toned down a bit, probably. But if that had happened in a world where Chopper stayed as he was, Zeb stayed as he was, and all that, then it basically kills a whole archetype of rebels, because those units are just not great. Kanan lists are very much built around Kanan is insane, and he carries the rest of the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, if I could see the grand design behind what we're seeing in the changes present, I think something about Kanan and something about his relationship to Spectres is that we're probably not going to see that many more Spectres. We're probably not going to see like a whole league of like new Spectres that Kanan might play with, and that's why like Kanan at his current power level, like I think there will be some very interesting Rebel synergy that's out there, but we're probably not going to see that much more Spectre synergy. So like I think I can see why you don't necessarily need to bring him down. Whereas to use the example we just had, there are going to be so many more Imperials. There are so many Imperial options, and if you didn't do something about Hask and ISF, like that essentially was a leash around whatever next Imperial you wanted to make. So I totally understand why it is that you, like, they might have left Kanan alone. I understand why some people might be really surprised given how well he's performing in different events, but, like, that is... I'm not going to say that is the most we'll ever see out of Kanan, but, like, I think the finish line is...
Kanan has peaked. No, I think you make a great point. Kanan is not going to get better in a sense that he's not going to get more synergy. We already have someone like Cassian, who I think is going to shove Kanan a little out of the meta.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially because Cassian can take someone like Baze and Chirrut, who we've seen their unit card, we haven't seen their trees. They look really good. Pathfinders are fine, but they're two bodies. Rebel Commandos are really good. Kanan likes Spectre supports, and those are still kind of mid. And yeah, he doesn't get more tag synergy. He's kind of peaked. I'm biased because I'm someone who plays Kanan. Yeah. But as someone who plays Kanan, I kind of feel like I'm also a little bit aware that, yes, he's very good, but he's not perfect. Or at least the lists he excels in.
Absolutely.
Have their weaknesses.
We have lost playing Kanan. We have played against people playing Kanan and won. Like, I think it's fine. I do think one big thing I want to take away from this list of changes is that I feel like all the directions they went in were correct, right? There was no one I was looking at that was like, man, this is overpowered, and they buffed them. Or they were underpowered and they nerfed them. Like, I feel like I really think AMG's really done a great job with this list of balance changes, being really tuned in with their community, and I think that's amazing. Sure, everyone can come up with things where they're like, oh, why didn't like Boosh get a buff? But like, I think on the whole, it's like, nah, they addressed I think the biggest problems, and I'm really delighted to see all the changes they made and the directions they made them in. We can argue about like they should have gone further or they shouldn't have gone far.
Or they should, they could have picked at this unit or that unit. There's always going to be stuff like that. But yeah, as you say, the directions spot on. And I appreciate that they didn't, like, just nuke certain things into the ground. Like, yes, is Hask worse? Definitely. Is he completely nuked into the ground? I personally don't think so.
Absolutely.
Was Jango nerfed into the ground? No, I don't think so. Was Obi-Wan, Obi-2 nerfed into the ground? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. None of the nerfs have made anyone unplayable, which is great. And if anything, they've just done work to open up list building options, whether by increasing errors with like Cad and Hondo, or by making like everyone's bringing ISF. Well, maybe not everyone does. And if you're still really keen on playing Imperials, try out the Inquisitors. They're pretty great now.
I'm excited. It's kind of the Wild West out there. We'll play some games with all these new things, I bet, over time and have a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. Hope you guys are as well. And enjoy. See you guys next time.
Take it easy.